What the 16th century shipwreck found on the coast of Kent, England, tells us about trade in Tudor England. Gary Paul Baker, postdoctoral research in history, University of East Anglia, UK, reports, the recent discovery of a well-preserved early modern shipwreck in the mudflats of Tankertown Beach near Whitstable, Kent, is a highly significant archaeological find. Not only can it provide important information on early modern shipbuilding techniques, it can also provide valuable insights into the maritime trade of late Tudor and early Stuart England. Archaeologists have reportedly subjected the ship's oak planks to dendrochronological sampling, a process which dates timber through an analysis of rings width of trees. The test reveals that it was felled in a southern British woodland in 1531, while 3 other samples of different timbers have been provisionally dated to the 16th century. The hull's construction suggests the vessel is a late 16th or early 17th century Carvel-built single-masted merchant ship. It was a process whereby the hull's planks were fastened to a frame while their edges flush against one another, as opposed to clinker building where the planks overlap along their edges. The wreck is about 12 meters long by 5 meters wide, 12 meters by 3 feet. That's about 36 feet long by 15 feet wide. So you can see how small they were. And it's estimated to be between 100 to 200 tons. The carrying capacity of the vessel in Bordeaux wine casks or tons is about 1,000 liters or 210 gallons a barrel, the common measure used in England at the time. It's the only known wreck of this period in the southeast of England. The Department for Culture, Media and Sport, on the advice of Historic England, has therefore scheduled the wreck as one of national importance, giving it protected status. It's difficult to say at this stage whether or not the ship is an English vessel. The provenance of some of its timbers would suggest it is, but it could equally be Dutch or German built. The wreck's location, close to a series of well-known copperas, that's iron sulfate, also known as green vitriol, works in northern Kent, has led to suggestions that the ship was involved in the trade of its important commodity, which was in dyeing and tanning and in the production of ink. But without further investigation, it's difficult to know whether this is the case or whether the vessel's final resting place was by accident or design. It may have been abandoned on the coast in an area that was once a tidal salt marsh. It was large for its time, even though for us it's tiny. It's like a dinghy almost. Now, whether it is an English ship or not, a merchant ship of 100 to 200 tons was atypical of the vast majority of merchant ships operating in northern European waters in the 16th century. Recent research into the merchant fleet of medieval and Tudor England, using the English National Customs accounts which record seaborne trade of both English and foreign ships, allows us to place the ship found in Kent within the wider context of the merchant fleet of the period. The research found that most 16th century English merchant vessels in the period 1565 to 1580 were on average between 20 to 30 tons burden carrying capacity. English seaborne trade in this period was predominantly coastal, with voyages between English ports. This coastal trade was undertaken by ships of all sizes, but the majority of cargoes were carried in ships of less than 100 tons. Fewer than 1% of coastal trading voyages from 1565 to 1580 were by ships of 100 tons and over. Smaller ships, that is to say ships of 50 tons or less, also dominated overseas trade, but large ships of 100 tons and over were far more prevalent in overseas activity. 25% of overseas voyages by English ships were undertaken by vessels of 100 tons and over. It was a similar case for the foreign ships trading in England, though one might expect foreign vessels to be bigger, especially if they came from farther away places like Spain. The English customs accounts reveal that about 90% of foreign ships trading with England were 50 tons or less. At 100 to 200 tons, the Kent ship was therefore in the top tier of merchant ship activity at the time. Trading places. The ship's size also hints at the voyages it may have undertaken. The final decade of the 16th century and the first decades of the 17th were important in the development of England as a maritime nation. Some overseas trade routes, such as those between England, France, and the Low Countries being Holland, Pays-Bas in French, even those to farther flung destinations such as Baltic, Spain, and Portugal, have been traversed since the Middle Ages, but others were new. As the merchant fleet increased in size and tonnage after about 1580, so too did the places with which English vessels traded. Large Tudor merchant vessels traveled to Russia, North Africa, the Azores, and by the last decades of the 16th and early 17th centuries, began traversing the Atlantic to the New World with increasing frequency and rounded the southern tip of Africa into the Indian Ocean. They brought back with them increasingly exotic goods like silk, sugar, pepper, currants, crops from the Americas such as potato, maize, even coffee, and many other exotic goods. The Kent ship may well have been involved in the slow but steady growth of overseas trade. Excavations underway by Wessex Archaeology will hopefully discover more about the vessel's provenance, usage, and some personal effects of the ship's crew, shedding invaluable light on the ship that sits at the critical juncture in the development of an English maritime empire. This is from The Conservation.